Second brother, you won't ever get rid of that stealing habit of yours, will you? Smiling, Duda Zhang Asheng joined in on the laughter. What little gem? Let me see it. Hidden hero of the bustling city Quan Jinfa, being a merchant by trade, was curious. With a flick of his arm, Zhu Chong tossed the dagger over. A streak of a blue shot across the sky in the sunlight. The light from the dagger wavered, looking as if a small rainbow had just materialized, causing everyone present to shout in praise. Excellent! Quan Jinfa involuntarily yelled as the dagger flew towards his face, sending a shiver down his spine. He reached out and caught the dagger by the handle. He touched endlessly in admiration as he examined the dagger. When his attention moved to the handle, he saw the characters Yang Kang carved onto it. This is a Han name. How did this dagger end up here in Mongolia? A question shot through his mind. Yang Kang, Yang Kang? I have never heard of a hero named Yang Kang. If he isn't a martial arts hero, why would he have such an exceptional weapon? Big brother. Do you know who Yang Kang is? He called out. Yang Kang? Kazhenur searched through his memory for a while and shook his head. I have never heard of him before. Yang Kang was the name that Qu Chuji had given to the baby that was still inside of Bao Ziruo. The two fathers had exchanged daggers, and that was how Li Ping ended up with the dagger that had Yang Kang carved on it. Of course, the 7 freaks did not know of this matter. Of the 7, Kazhenur was the oldest as well as the most knowledgeable. If he did not know, then there was no way that the other 6 did. Qu Chuji is searching for Yang Taizin's widow. Could this Yang Kang have something to do with Yang Taizin? Quan Jinfa's attention to detail made him ask. Well, if we find Yang Taizin's widow, we would still have one up that bull nose. Zhu Chong joked. But having searched endlessly and fruitlessly for the past 6 years, this seemingly remote and completely unrelated lead was something that none of them were willing to let slip by. Let's go back and ask that kid. Han Zhaoying concluded. Han Baoyu's horse was the fastest, so he arrived back where the kids were first, only to discover that the kids were at it again. Tolui and Gojing were, once again, pinned down to the ground. Han Baoju ordered the kids to break it up, but none of them heeded his words. Getting impatient, he grabbed a couple of kids and threw them off to the side. You 2 dogs come back tomorrow and we'll fight again. Dux threatened Tolui, because he was too scared to carry on fighting. Oh, tomorrow. Tolui shouted back as Dux led his gang away. He already had plans for what to do. He would go and ask his 3rd brother Ogdai for help as soon as he got back. Of all his brothers, Ogdai was the nicest to him, and strong as well. He would surely help if asked. Give it back. Despite having his face covered with blood from his nose, Gojing put his hand out to Zhu Chong. Sure, no problem. Zhu Chong waved the dagger back and forth in front of Gojing's face. But you have to tell me where you got this dagger. My mom gave it to me. Gojing answered, wiping the blood away from his still bleeding nose with a sleeve. What's your dad's name? Gojing never had a father and was caught speechless by the question. All he could do was shake his head. Is your surname Yang? Quan Jinfa asked. Once again, Gojing shook his head. Seeing that this kid was rather slow, the 7 freaks were quite disappointed. Who's Yang Kang? Zhu Chong probed further. Gojing still only shook his head. The 7 freaks had always valued their integrity above all else, so they always kept their word, even to a kid. Zhu Chong handed the dagger back to Gojing. You can go home now. Han Zhaoying took out a handkerchief and wiped off the blood from Gojing's face as she tenderly told him. Don't fight anymore. You are still small, you can't beat them yet. Afterward, the 7 of them climbed back onto their horses and began to leave. Gojing just stood there, watching them ride off to the east. Gojing, let's go back, Tolui suggested. The 7 freaks were already quite a distance away, but Kazhenur's hearing was incredibly sensitive. When he heard the name Gojing, his entire body shook violently. He immediately jerked his horse around and rode back to the kids. "Boy, your surname is Go? You are Han Chinese and not Mongolian, right?" he anxiously asked. Go Jing grunted an assertion, sending Ke Zhen'er's mind into the clouds with joy. "Who is your mother?" he hurriedly asked. "Mom is a mom," Go Jing answered, making Ke Zhen'er scratch his head for a bit. "Can you take me to your mother? My mom's not here." "Sister, you ask him," Ke Zhen'er suggested, realizing that there was some hostility in Go Jing's responses. Han Zhaoying hopped off of her horse and walked up to Go Jing. "Where's your father?" she asked in a warm voice. "My dad was killed by bad people. When I grow up, I'm going to kill them and avenge my father." "What was your father's name?" Han Zhaoying was so excited that her voice was trembling. But Go Jing just shook his head. "Who killed your father?" Ke Zhen'er asked. His name is Duan Jiandi." Go Jing could barely contain his anger as he said that name. Because Li Ping knew that in such a desolate and remote place as the steppe, any moment could bring with it many dangers. She knew that her chances of ever returning to China were nearly non-existent. If something should happen to her suddenly, her son would never know the name of his mortal enemy, and that would not do. She had long ago told her son, over and over again, the name and appearance of Duan Jiandi. She was an illiterate farm girl and had always called her husband Zhao Gear. She had heard other people call him Brother Go, but had never cared about what her husband's real name was. This was why Go Jing had only ever known his father to be his dad and did not know that he had other names. Duan Jiandi. That name did not come out of Go Jing's mouth very loudly, but when the 7 freaks heard it, the shock rendered them speechless. Even if 3 bolts of lightning suddenly struck beside them on this clear and sunny day, it would not have shocked them as much. In the blink of an eye, it felt as if the earth beneath them shook, as if the wind and air around them became colored. Only after a very prolonged silence did Han Zhaoying suddenly let out an ecstatic shout. At the same time, Zhang Yisheng was beating his fists onto his chest like a madman. Quan Jinfa had thrown his arm tightly around Nan Ziren's neck, and Han Baozhu was doing backflips on his horse's saddle. Ke Zhen'er reared his head back and laughed crazily, while Zhu Chong was spinning like a top. Seeing them act like this, Tolui and Go Jing could not decide whether they were funny or just plain crazy. Only after a long time did the 7 freaks finally, slowly, calm down, but their faces were filled with joy. "Merciful Bodhisattva, thank you, thank you." Zhang Yisheng knelt down and prayed. "Little brother, let's sit down and talk," Han Zhaoying said to Go Jing. Anxious to get back and ask his brother Ogdai for help, as well as having a bad feeling about these 7 strangers with their strange accents and even stranger behavior, Tolui did not want to stay any longer. Even though these same strangers had just helped them in a fight, Tolui incessantly urged Go Jing to start heading back. "I need to go now." Go Jing finally relented and began to walk away hand in hand with Tolui. "Hey, you can't go now. Let that little friend of yours go back by himself." Han Baozhu almost panicked and yelled at the top of his lungs. The 2 little kids were scared of the man's ugly complexion and immediately started to run as soon as he began to yell. Han Baozhu chased them and was just about to grab the back of Go Jing's neck with his fat hands when Zhu Chong cut him off. "Third brother, don't be so rude." Zhu Chong lightly parried Han Baoyu's hand and stopped it in mid-move, much to Han Baoyu's surprise. Picking up a little speed, Zhu Chong quickly got in front of the 2 little kids. "I'm going to do some magic, you guys just watch, okay?" He smiled at the kids as he picked up 3 stones. Go Jing and Tolui's curiosity was immediately piqued and both of them stopped and watched him. Zhu Chong held his right hand out for all to see and placed the stones in the middle of his hand. "Gone!" he shouted as he balled his hand into a fist. When he opened his hand again, the stones were gone, shocking the little kids. "Get in there!" Zhu Chong pointed at the old hat that was on top of his head before taking it off. The stones were sitting right in the middle of the hat. Gojing and Talui let out a loud cheer and applauded with joy. At this moment, a flock of wild geese flew toward them in a spear formation. This gave Zhu Chong an idea. Now let my big brother show you a trick. He fished out a handkerchief, handed it to Talui, and pointed at Kazhener. Put this blindfold on him. Is it hide and go seek? Talui hopefully wondered out loud as he put the blindfold on Kazhener. No. He will shoot a wild goose out of the sky while blindfolded. Zhu Chong answered as he produced a bow and an arrow. How could he? I don't believe you. Talui concluded. While the conversation was going on, the wild geese flew straight overhead. Zhu Chong flicked his arm and tossed the 3 stones in his hand up at the geese. Because of his powerful hands, the stones shot up and startled the geese, causing the lead goose to honk several times as he readied to lead the formation in a different direction. But Kazhener had already determined its location, drew his bow to the fullest, and let loose. He hit the goose squarely in the belly and the goose, with the arrow still in it, tumbled down onto the ground. Talui and Gojing exploded with another cheer. They ran off to retrieve the goose and brought it back to Kazhener, their young hearts filled with admiration. Remember how the 8 boys ganged up on you 2 earlier? Well, if you know some martial arts, then you won't have to worry about there being more than one of them. Zhu Chong told the kids. We will fight some more tomorrow and I'm going to get my older brother to help. Talui told him. Get help from your older brother. Hang, that's something that useless kids do. I'll teach you a couple of moves that I guarantee will help you win tomorrow. Zhu Chong replied. You mean the 2 of us beating the 8 of them? Talui asked. Yes. Yay. Come on, teach me. Talui was greatly excited at the prospect of beating Dutch. How about you, don't you want to learn too? Zhu Chong asked him. Hed noticed that Gojing was standing to the side, seemingly uninterested. Mom told me that I shouldn't fight others. If I learn how to fight, then my mom will be unhappy. Little chicken. Han Baoju lightly berated him. If that's true, why were you in a fight just now? Zhu Chong asked again. Because they started it. So what are you going to do when you see your enemy, Duan Jiandi? Kazhener asked in a heavy tone. I'll kill him to avenge my father. Just hearing that name made a fiery glare flash from Gojing's young eyes. Your father was an expert in martial arts yet was still killed by him. How could you kill him if you don't know any martial arts? How can you get your revenge then? Kazhener rendered Gojing speechless with those questions. See? You have to learn some martial arts. Han Zhaoying concluded for him. See that peak over there? Zhu Chong pointed at a deserted mountain top to his left. If you want to learn martial arts and get your revenge, then come to the top of that mountain tonight at midnight. But you have to come by yourself. Besides this little friend of yours, you can't let anybody else find out about it. Brave enough to do it. Afraid of ghosts? Gojing was still stupidly standing there, but Talui was getting impatient. Come on, teach me, please. Zhu Chong suddenly grabbed his wrist, hooked his left foot behind him, and gently tripped him, sending Talui onto the ground. Why did you trip me? Talui angrily demanded once he got back up off the ground. That was martial arts, did you learn it? Zhu Chong smiled as he answered. As it turned out, Talui was quite smart and understood right away. He mimicked Zhu Chong and showed the move against an imaginary foe. Teach me something else, he said to Zhu Chong. Zhu Chong faked a punch toward Talui's face. Talui dodged to the left, but Zhu Chong's right fist was waiting there for him. This punch had no force behind it and stopped the moment it touched Talui's nose. Yay! Teach me something else. Talui was ecstatic. Zhu Chong suddenly braced himself and gently bumped his shoulders squarely into the little kid's stomach, sending him flying off. Quan Jinfa jumped up, caught him in midair, and gently put him back onto the ground. Mister, Teach me something else. If you master those 3 moves, most adults won't be able to beat you. Enough is enough. Zhu Chong smiled and told him before turning towards Go Jing. Did you get them? Go Jing was still dumbstruck and not really thinking of anything as he absent-mindedly shook his head. When compared to the smart and intelligent Tului, Go Jing seemed incredibly stupid and slow to the 7 freaks, who were very disappointed at this turn of events. Han Zhaoying let out a long sigh and her eyes reddened. I say that we stop wasting energy and just take the mother and son back south and hand them over to Qu Chuji. As for the competition, let's just admit defeat. Quan Jinfa observed. This kid's makeup is just too hopeless. He's not the kung fu practicing type. Zhu Chong agreed. There isn't a bit of fight in him. I don't see how it's going to work either. Han Baoju also agreed and the 7 freaks began discussing the matter amongst themselves in their southern dialects. You 2 can go home now. Han Zhaoying waved at the 2 little kids. Tului grabbed hold of Go Jing's hand and they happily skipped off. Having searched for 6 long and hard years all over the boundless steppe, the 7 freaks were joyous beyond description when they finally found Go Jing. As it turned out, the joy was only temporary. When they discovered that the kid was so dumb that it would be incredibly difficult for him to ever amount to much as a martial artist, they could not help feeling defeated. This setback could only be matched by the one they would experience had they, in fact, never found Go Jing. Han Baoju, whip in hand, was relentlessly beating the ground, trying to vent his frustration and nobody could get him to stop. All this time, only the woodchopper of the southern mountains, Nan Ren, remained silent. Well, what do you think, 4th brother? Ke Zhener asked. Very good. Nan Ren replied. What's very good? Zhu Chong inquired. The kid's very good, he added. 4th brother always acts as if speaking costs him money. Han Zhaoying said, letting the frustration get to her. He will never say a word more than he has to. I was also very dumb as a kid. Nan Ren gently smiled. He was always very quiet and every word that he spoke had already been carefully thought over, meaning that he was rarely wrong. Hearing him, the other 6 freaks found a glimmer of hope and instantly became more confident. Right, us right. Since when have I been smart? Zhang Asheng agreed, looking in Han Zhaoying's direction. Let's wait and see if he's got the guts to come tonight. Zhu Chong suggested. I say most likely not. Quan Jinfa replied. I'm going to go find where he lives first. He jumped off of his horse and trailed far behind Tului and Go Jing until he saw them walking into their own gurs. That night, the 7 freaks waited on the deserted mountain top. It was 15 minutes to 10 and the Big Dipper had noticeably changed its position, but Go Jing was nowhere to be seen. Zhu Chong sighed, the 7 freaks of the south never lost to anyone in our lives. But in the end, we lose to that Taoist priest. Looking to the west, dark clouds were gathering on top of each other off on the horizon. But above their heads, not a cloud could be seen in the dark blue sky. The winds were swirling around them from the northwest. Sometimes it would gust, other times it would be still. In the middle of the sky hung the bright moon, but a faint yellow ring could be discerned around it. Looks like there's going to be a storm tonight. Han Zhaoying observed. The kid is not going to come. Then let's go to him tomorrow morning. Zhang Asheng replied. Being a little slow is not a big problem. But if this kid is afraid of the dark, Ke Zhener sighed and shook his head. The 7 of them were just wandering around when Han Baoju suddenly spotted something in a bush. Hey, what's that? He pointed at 3 piles of white objects that looked awfully strange in the moonlight. Quan Jinfa walked over to investigate only to discover that they were human skulls placed neatly in 3 piles. It must have been those little kids that piled up the skulls like that. He laughed before suddenly noticing something else. What, second brother? Come quickly. The sudden change in the tone of his voice was easily noticeable and unsettling for everyone. Other than Ke Zhener, The other freaks made their way over to him. Look at this. Quan Jinfa picked up one particular skull and handed it over to Zhu Chong. When Zhu Chong inspected the skull closely, he noticed that on the dome of the skull there were 5 holes positioned as though they were made by fingers. He tried with his own hand and the 5 holes were positioned properly for his fingers. The hole for his thumb was a little bigger than the others, while the hole for his pinky was a little smaller. It seemed as if somebody had carefully carved the holes into the skull to match a particular hand. Obviously, it was not a child's toy that the little kids had left here. Zhu Chong's expression changed dramatically. He bent over and picked up 2 more skulls and discovered that they also had these holes in them. Could somebody have made these holes with their fingers? He wondered. But there had not been anybody in the world with martial arts skills so powerful as to be able to smash holes through bone just using fingers. With this realization, he was rendered silent and awestruck. Could it be some man-eating beast or monster that lives around here? Han Zhaoying said, almost yelling. Thought's right, it must be a monster. Han Baoju concurred. But if it is some beast, then why would it or could it put the skulls in such neat piles? Quan Jinfa asked, deep in thought. How are they placed? Zhen'er said, after making his way over to them. In a 3-pyramid formation. Every pile consists of 9 skulls. Quan Jinfa answered. Are they stacked in 3 layers, with 5 skulls on the bottom layer, 3 in the middle layer, and 1 on the top? Yes. Quan Jinfa was shocked. Big brother, how did you know that? Go 100 steps northeast and northwest and tell me what you see. Zhen'er did not answer his question but instead, anxiously directed them. His demeanor was one of extreme anxiety, almost bordering panic. This was so different from his normal calm steadiness that the other freaks did not dare waste 1 second, and in threes, they headed off in the 2 directions. Soon, Han Zhaoying, who went to the northeast, and Quan Jinfa, who went to the northwest, yelled out at the same instant. There are skull piles here too. This is a matter of life and death. Zhen'er literally flew over to the pile of skulls at the northwest and forcefully, but quietly ordered. Don't raise your voice, no matter what. The 3 freaks were quite taken aback by his words and weren't quite sure what to make of them. Zhen'er quickly made his way to Han Zhaoying's group to the northeast and told them the same thing. Is it monsters or mortal enemies? Zhang Asheng asked, in a hushed voice. They are mortal enemies of mine. They are formidable experts and they killed my brother. By this time the freaks in the other group had made their way over as well. Hearing his words, all of the freaks were quite surprised. The 6 of them and Zhen'er, although they are sworn brother, enjoy friendly relations, but he hates others for mentioning his disability. So the 6 only knew that he was unfortunately injured when he was young, never dared to ask until now know that he was harmed by the enemy. Zhen'er's martial arts were strong, and he was so smart and calm. If he was defeated, then the enemy must be potent. Zhen'er picked up a skull and ran his hands over it, inspecting it. After finding the holes, he took his right hand and tried out the holes with his fingers. They did it. They did it. They actually mastered it. He mumbled to himself before turning to the other freaks. There are 3 piles here as well? Yes. Han Zhaoying answered. Are there 8 skulls in every pile? Zhen'er inquired. 1 pile has 9. The other 2 piles have 8. Han Zhaoying again answered. Go and count the other groups as well. Han Zhaoying swiftly ran over to the other group and then returned just as quickly. There's a pile of 7 over there. They are all decapitated heads and the flesh has not decomposed yet. Then that means they will be here very soon. Zhen'er concluded quietly and handed the skull over to Quan Jinfa. Carefully return this to where it was, and don't leave any trace of our presence. Quan Jinfa quickly placed everything back in their original positions and returned to Zhen'er. All of their eyes were upon Zhen'er as they quietly waited for his explanation. It's Copper Corpse and Iron Corpse. Zhener looked as if he was looking up at the sky and his face twitched continuously. But aren't they dead? Can they still be alive? This news shocked Zhu Chong tremendously. I thought they were dead as well. But it turns out that they have been hiding here training their 9-yin white bone claws, Zhener said. Brothers, quickly mount your horses and ride south as fast as you can and don't come back. Wait for me after you have gone 5,000 li. Wait for 10 days. If I don't show up on the 10th day, then you need not wait any longer.